storm began shortly before 8 at night, but no one in the neighborhood remembered seeing clouds in the sky during the day. It was as if the darkness had formed out of nowhere, swallowing the small neighborhood of old houses that sat on the outskirts of the city. Among those houses one stood out, not for being bigger or prettier, but because it seemed burdened by a heavy silence, as if it guarded a secret locked away for decades. The house belonged to Laura, a single mother who lived with her 11-year-old daughter, Marina. They had moved in only 2 weeks earlier, hoping to start over after a difficult period. The house was spacious, with the smell of old wood and echoes that seemed to follow every step. But Laura believed that with time, it would become a cozy home. That night, however, everything felt wrong. The wind slammed against the windows as if something were trying to get inside. The lights flickered. And even with the heavy rain, Laura swore she heard footsteps in the attic. Slow, dragging footsteps, as if someone were walking directly above Marina's room. But the girl was already asleep, deeply, breathing calmly. Or at least, that was what Laura wanted to believe. The night went on, and the entire house seemed to breathe along with the storm. Then a deep sound echoed through the hallway. A firm thump coming from Marina's bedroom door. Laura stood up with her heart racing. The door was slightly open, swaying with the wind that blew in through a window she knew she had closed before going to sleep. When she approached, the air grew cold. The lamp flickered twice, and for an instant, she saw something reflected in the mirror, a small hunched silhouette standing beside the girl's bed. But when the light blinked again, the figure had vanished, leaving only the curtain trembling and the subtle sound of a muffled laugh coming from somewhere in the dark. Laura approached the bed. Marina was awake but motionless. Her eyes were open, fixed on the ceiling. Her lips moved very slowly, murmuring words Laura didn't recognize. Guttural words, impossible for a child to pronounce. An ancient language, like a reversed prayer, distorted. "Sweetie," Laura whispered, feeling her stomach drop. Marina didn't respond, but her eyes, still fixed on the ceiling, filled with tears that slid silently down the sides of her face. Then the girl finally spoke. But not with her own voice. The voice was deep, hoarse, masculine. "He has awakened." Laura stepped back. The room seemed to shrink around her, as if the shadows were drawing closer. The temperature dropped so much she could see her own breath, and before she could react, the bedroom door slammed shut behind her, trapping mother and daughter in a silence so absolute that not even the storm could break through. Something in that house was waking, something that should never have been freed. The door that had slammed shut behind Laura remained locked, even though it had no lock at all. She pulled the handle hard, but the cold metal seemed to pulse in her hand, as if it were alive. Marina remained lying down, motionless, murmuring words that belonged to no modern language. The lamp flickered in irregular intervals, lighting the room just enough to reveal that the air appeared denser, heavier. "Marina, sweetheart, look at me," Laura begged, moving closer to the bed. But when she touched the girl's arm, she recoiled immediately. Marina's skin was as cold as ice, and the moment Laura touched her, the girl arched her body backward, as if something were pulling her by the ribs. Her eyes, once full of tears, were now completely white. The room shook. The walls cracked as if the wood were splitting apart. The lamp exploded, releasing sparks. The girl's shadow projected onto the ceiling, but the shadow did not mimic her movements. While Marina trembled on the bed, the shadow remained completely still, as if watching everything with its own intent. Then the voice returned. "You shouldn't have come here, Laura." The voice seemed to come from every corner of the room at once, reverberating inside the walls, inside Laura's body. It was deep, ancient, filled with such profound malice that its mere vibration blurred her vision. "Who's there?" she cried, but her voice came out shaky, weak. Marina slowly turned her face toward her mother. She didn't blink. She didn't breathe. She only stared, with those white eyes that shone like wet glass. "I chose her," the voice said through the girl's mouth, "and you can't take her from me." A crash echoed from the attic, so loud the ceiling seemed to give way for a moment. A strong smell of sulfur filled the room, burning Laura's throat. She began coughing, struggling to stay on her feet. The curtain tore on its own, as if invisible claws had shredded it. Suddenly, Marina rose from the bed. She didn't sit up. She didn't roll over. She simply lifted into the air, as if pulled by invisible strings tied to her spine. She floated 1/2 meter above the mattress, her body rigid, her fingers curved like claws. Laura fell to her knees, unable to process what she was seeing. The girl's hair moved as if submerged in water. Her mouth opened far beyond what was humanly possible, letting out a scream that was not human, a scream filled with voices, as if dozens of mouths were screaming through her. The lights in the entire house went out at once. When darkness took over, the scream suddenly stopped, and in the absolute silence, something walked slowly down the hallway outside. Firm, calculated footsteps that approached the bedroom door. Laura tried to move, but her body felt nailed to the floor. The footsteps stopped right behind the door, and then, with a voice that wasn't Marina's, nor the entity that spoke through her, but a third voice, deep, raspy, someone whispered, "It's been a long time, but I am back." The door finally opened on its own, creaking slowly, as if granting passage to something that should never cross it. But in the hallway there was no one. Only darkness. Darkness so thick it seemed to move, rippling like living mist. Laura felt the instinct to run, but the sound of bones cracking behind her made her freeze. Marina descended slowly, no longer floating and returning to the mattress, but her movements were uncoordinated, broken, as if her body were trying, and failing, to imitate human form. The girl's eyes briefly returned to normal, and she whispered in her real voice, "Mom, he's hungry." Laura approached her, desperate, but the girl recoiled, as if afraid of her own mother's presence. Then her expression changed. A strange smile formed on Marina's lips, a smile that didn't fit her childlike face, too wide, too tense, and the voice returned. "She feels, but she doesn't understand. You also used to feel it, Laura, remember?" The world seemed to stop for a second. I don't know what you're talking about," Laura murmured. But she did. She knew from the first day she entered that house and saw the symbol carved into the attic doorway. A circular symbol formed by 3 interlocked claws. The same symbol she'd seen as a child in the village where she was born, carved into the stone of an abandoned church everyone avoided. The entity laughed, a dragged, muffled laugh. "You escaped once, but no one escapes twice." Laura stepped back, breathing fast. At that moment, the dim light in the hallway flicked on by itself, revealing something on the wall, deep, long marks, like scratches made by powerful hands. Beside them, dark, dried stains, something that was definitely not paint. The voice continued, now lower, as if speaking directly inside her mind. "Before Marina, there was you. Before you, your mother. Before her, your grandmother. Always a woman, always the most sensitive. The house only slept, waiting for the next." Laura's legs trembled. Everything made sense. Her mother had always spoken of waking nightmares, of whispers behind the walls, of an eye that never closed. But she died too early to explain. Now, the thing was there, revealing what her family had tried to hide for generations. "What do you want?" Laura asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The room darkened again, as if the entity closed the world around them. "I do not want. I demand. I want what was promised to me long ago. I want the guardian of the door, the child who would be born with an empty space in the soul, the perfect child to bear my face." Marina cried, but not with her own tears. Her eyes leaked a thick, black liquid that stained the pillow. "She is mine, Laura," the voice said, closer than ever. "And you, of all people, should know there is no stopping me." The floor vibrated as if something crawled beneath the boards. The symbol on the attic frame glowed with a faint red, and in that instant, Laura understood. The entity hadn't just awakened. It was about to be fully freed. The symbol glowed brighter, pulsing like an evil heart trapped in the attic doorway. The red light spread down the hallway, casting long shadows that writhed as if alive. Laura felt an intense cold climb her spine, accompanied by the uneven sound of the boards shaking beneath her feet. Something was climbing, something heavy, something that scraped the wood as it advanced. Laura ran to Marina, pulling her toward the door. But the girl held onto the bed frame with supernatural strength, her face twisted with pure terror. "I can't. He won't let me," Marina sobbed, but her voice seemed to come from far away. Before Laura could insist, the hallway floor arched upward, as if something had pushed the boards from below. They then split open, releasing thick black smoke that seeped through the cracks. A deep creak echoed, so low it made Laura's ears ring. The entity was emerging. In a desperate act, Laura pulled Marina with all her strength. But the girl was ripped from her hands as if invisible strings dragged her back to the bed. Then the bedroom door slammed shut again, closing with impossible speed. This time, the wood contorted, as if sharp hands pressed it from the outside in. The room fell silent. Then it began. The walls started to bleed. Cracks opened from top to bottom, dripping a dark, hot liquid that pooled on the floor in heavy drops. The air grew so dense Laura could barely breathe. The ceiling vibrated, and a voice, hundreds of voices, murmured words that made reality itself seem to fold. "You brought the key, Laura," a deep voice said. "You brought the right blood to open what was left unfinished." The floor beneath Marina opened in a narrow crack, illuminated by an unnatural red glow. The girl screamed, clinging to the sheet. Laura lunged forward, stumbling, fighting against the invisible pressure that pushed her back. Each step felt like it weighed tons. The air was so cold it cut like blades. Even so, she threw herself beside her daughter, pulling her away from the crack that pulsed like an open wound. The entire house reacted. The hallway tilted as if the structure were melting. The attic thumped once, twice, 3 times, until the upper door opened on its own. From it, thick shadows spilled down the walls, forming contorted faces that screamed without sound. Marina was lifted into the air again, this time with violent movements, twisting her spine, her arms, her head. Her eyes rolled back, showing only white. The entity's voice overtook the room. "She is the vessel. The ritual has begun. There is no return." Laura screamed, grabbing her daughter's leg, but something shoved her hard, throwing her against the wall. The impact was so abrupt that the air was knocked from her lungs. She tried to stand, but invisible hands held her by the neck, squeezing, crushing her breath. The lights flickered one last time. The symbol on the door frame glowed like fire, and the entire house roared, a deep, monstrous sound, as if something colossal had been ripped out of the depths of hell and finally set free. The ritual was almost complete, and Marina was disappearing inside it. The roar that overtook the house seemed to displace the air, pushing Laura against the floor. The sulfur stung her throat, but the sight of Marina suspended in the air, contorting like a broken marionette, was even more suffocating. The red light from the crack in the floor lit the room like liquid fire, flickering in pulses that matched the rhythm of a heart. A heart that was not human. With extreme effort, Laura crawled back toward her daughter. Every movement felt like wading through dense water. The voices around her grew louder, spinning like a chorus of tortured souls. The entity spoke in all of them. "The bridge is open. The body is ready. Leave, human. This is not your world." The shadow projected on the ceiling finally moved. Slowly, like a great beast rising for the first time in millennia. It took shape. Long arms, curved fingers, a head tilted in an anatomy that obeyed no rule of reality. Its eyes, if they could be called that, were 2 yellow points of light, burning like embers. Laura felt her consciousness slipping. But when Marina screamed, or perhaps when something inside Laura screamed for her daughter, a sudden heat filled her chest. She rose at once, staggering, but determined. "You're not taking my daughter," she shouted, her voice broken by despair. The entity turned slowly toward her. The air grew so cold that Laura's breath came out in white puffs. "I do not take her," the creature answered, bending its neck impossibly. "She comes." The shadow extended one of its hands, far too long, far too thin, toward Marina. The girl began to be pulled toward the crack in the floor, her feet dragging sheets and wood behind her. The red glow intensified, illuminating the grotesque details of the shadow trying to cross into the physical world. Laura ran. She threw herself toward her daughter, grabbing her arm with all her strength. The entity lunged, and a crushing pressure filled the room, as if the air itself had become stone. Marina screamed, her body divided between two worlds. The creature's hand touched her shoulder, and, at that touch, the girl's skin burned as if marked by a red-hot iron. Laura roared, pulling harder, and then she saw it. On Laura's own arm, an ancient mark, the one she had tried to forget since childhood, began to glow beneath the skin. The same symbol on the doorframe. The same symbol from the abandoned church. The same one her mother told her never to touch. The entity stopped. The mark, it murmured, retreating slightly. You still carry it. Laura didn't understand, but she used the hesitation. With a desperate heave, she tore Marina from the creature's grasp. The girl fell against her, breathing with difficulty, her body weak and trembling. The house reacted violently. The ceiling opened as if something enormous were trying to break through. The walls shook. The floor exploded into splinters. The entity released a scream that made Laura's ears bleed. This is not over. You ignited what slept. And now, he comes for you. The crack in the floor burst into light, and everything turned white. The white light consumed everything. The bedroom, the hallway, the entire house, dissolving walls, shadows, and sounds. Laura felt her body thrown backward as if pulled by an invisible force. It was like falling without end, passing through layers of wind and cold until the impact hit. Hard, sharp. Suddenly, everything was silent. When she opened her eyes, Laura was on the living room floor. The windows were intact, the walls clean. No cracks, no blood, no pulsing shadows. The house looked normal, as if nothing had happened. Marina lay beside her, unconscious but breathing. Laura pulled her into her arms, crying with relief. The warmth of the girl's body slowly returned, driving away the supernatural cold that had consumed her. For a few seconds, Laura believed, or wanted to believe, that everything was over. But then she noticed. The mark. The skin of Marina's arm now bore in deep red, the same symbol that had glowed beneath Laura's skin. The same ancient symbol, the one the entity invoked. It looked burned into the girl's flesh, pulsing slowly, as if alive. No, 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 Laura whispered, touching the symbol with trembling hands. It was warm, burning, alive. A creak echoed in the ceiling. Laura froze. Another creak. Louder. This time it wasn't the wood vibrating. It was something walking. Slow, heavy footsteps circling directly above them, in the attic. Marina, Laura whispered, shaking her daughter gently. Sweetheart, please wake up. The girl opened her eyes. For a moment, Laura saw only their usual brown color, but something passed behind them, like a dark reflection, a fleeting shadow that did not belong to the real world. He, Marina murmured, her voice weak. He didn't leave. The footsteps in the attic stopped, directly above them. Laura stood with Marina in her arms. She ran to the front door, but as soon as she touched the doorknob, a hot shock shot through her arm. The door wouldn't open. It was locked from within, as if the house itself had decided to keep them in. The lights began to flicker. A laugh echoed from above, slow, low, growing like a twisted echo crawling along the walls. The air grew heavy again, and Laura physically felt, the entity descending, step by step, its presence making the air almost unbreathable. Marina clung to her mother's neck. He is trapped, the girl said, her voice trembling. Trapped inside me. Laura backed into the wall, paralyzed, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. The shadow descended the first step, then the second, then the third. The entire house seemed to tilt toward the creature, as if bowing to an ancient king. The entity stopped on the last step, still hidden in the darkness. Its eyes, two yellow embers, lit up within the shadow. We finish where we stopped, Guardian, the creature whispered, The door has opened. The mark has awakened. And now, you belong to me. The lights burst throughout the house. Laura's mind went dark, and the whole world vanished under the voice of the entity, repeating with absolute certainty, "This is only the beginning." The sound Laura heard before fainting continued echoing inside her mind when she awoke. A deep, dragging sound, like something breathing very close to her. The first thing she noticed was the cold. A cold so deep it seemed to live inside her bones. She opened her eyes. She was no longer in the living room. The floor beneath her was old damp wood, filled with the smell of dust and mold. The shadows on the walls seemed to drip like dark paint. The only light came from a candle placed in the center of the space. And with a sudden tightening in her chest, Laura realized where she was, in the attic. The same attic she had never been able to open since moving in. The same attic where the symbol had glowed. The same attic where the entity walked. Laura stood up, stumbling. "Marina?" she called, barely able to speak. Silence answered, but not for long. From the darkest corner of the attic, something moved, something small. The candlelight flickered, revealing the silhouette of a child sitting on the floor, with her back turned. "Marina!" Laura ran. But when she touched the child's shoulder, she realized immediately. It wasn't the Marina she knew. The child lifted her head slowly, far too slowly, as if the movement were controlled by invisible strings. The eyes that turned toward Laura were not brown. They were not human. They glowed like embers, reflecting a smile that did not belong to a child. "He said you would come," the girl murmured, her voice echoing twice, as if another spoke behind her. "He said it's your turn to open the door now." Laura stepped back, her heart hammering. The entity had not only taken Marina, it had turned the attic into a threshold. And Laura, now she was the next key. After the devastating events that nearly tore Marina from the world of the living, Laura awakens in the attic, a place that should have been empty, but now pulses with the presence of the ancestral entity that cursed her bloodline. As she tries to understand how she ended up there, the mother realizes the attic is not just a room in the house, but a threshold between two worlds, a point where reality unravels and the entity holds absolute dominion. Marina, now only a shadow of the child she once was, appears before her mother as a messenger of the horror approaching. Her eyes radiate the same mark burning on Laura's skin, revealing the ritual was never interrupted, only transformed. The creature no longer wants just the girl's body. It wants the final key, the link that will complete the cycle of 3 generations. That key is Laura. Trapped in the attic, surrounded by walls that whisper and shadows that breathe, Laura discovers her family has always been part of a macabre pact created to keep the entity asleep. But now the mark is fully awakened and hungry. When she realizes it, Marina is already gone. The candle goes out by itself. The floor trembles, and a voice appears behind her, low, warm, breathing into her ear as if it were inside her skin. The door has opened. The choice is made. Now, you enter. Everything ends with Laura letting out a suffocated scream, swallowed by the darkness closing around her, as 2 skeletal hands emerge from the floor, gripping her ankles and dragging her violently downward, to a place where light does not exist and where the entity has waited, patiently, for generations. The screen goes black, and all that remains is the sound, the same sound that started everything. 3 knocks, then 7, then silence, and the entity waits for its next victim,